Hey, you guys, welcome to the channel. Let me turn this volume down. Welcome to the channel. I know I haven't posted here in a minute. Just have different things I'm doing, and just imagine a circle of pots, and you got to make sure all the pots are taken care of and all of that, and then you'll eventually make it back to that pot. And so I do apologize. I haven't posted here in a minute, and just and then life too. Life happens. And so we're still here. I'm not going anywhere. I don't have any plans on to go anywhere at all. But this channel definitely is a platform for us to really, for those of us that are really interested in digging into, finding out these things that that Bible teachers, pastors, preachers, whomever, that had put out these things, and unfortunately they themselves didn't thoroughly research them. And so a lot of times people just jump on things and we repeat them. I'm a victim of that. I have done it myself. So not just a victim, but I participating in it. But as like they say, as you know more, as you know better, you do better, right? And so that's kind of been the story of my life. As I find out more things, I make those adjustments. But I'm not just making adjustments. I'm also showing people, hey, listen, this is where we erred. We got to fix this, right? And so that's what we do here. So anyway, in this video, oh my gosh, this one here is one of those things that I used to read in the Bible. I used to read this story in the Bible, and it always kind of in the back of my mind when I would read that passage, it would kind of be like a little scratch in the back of my head, like not in the front of the head, just in a little, just enough, just scratch on the back of my head. And I'm like, that's kind of odd. I mean, I know all cultures have their own unique practices and stuff, but this one, I don't know. But I just kept it going, like most people do. Okay. So what am I talking about? In the Bible, there is two references of a practice, of an oath that was taken. I'm going to read them for you. We're going to go to the first one, which is Genesis 24, verse 2-3. Both of you guys, you guys are very familiar. You should be familiar with these passages. Okay. So let's read it. And Abraham said unto the eldest servant of his house, that ruled over all that he had, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son, the daughters of the Canaanites. All right. And so that was the first one. You remember that whole passage where, they're in this remote area, and it's like, okay, how in the world is this promise that God gave me going to be carried out? Well, I'm gonna take my servant and say, listen, I'm gonna charge you to go find someone for me. So before you leave, put your hand under my thigh and let's swear. Okay, so that was one. But here's another one. Genesis chapter 47, verse 29-31. And the time drew nigh that Israel must die. He called his son Joseph and said unto him, if now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. All right. So that's when Jacob, who was, basically Jacob going bye-bye, basically. And, and before he did, this was his last request. Put your hand under my thigh. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is there's a guy that I have come across. This is a scholar. This is a guy that, when I say scholar, he actually worked for Rome, Church of Rome, for numbers of years as a Bible translator. Like that's what he did for years. Okay. And well respected in the field. He's got his critics like everybody else does. But for the most part, he's he's going to give you all the facts. You know what I mean? Because that's all he did. This was a translator, and he always would pull from these original sources and all this. So this is not someone to be compared with someone you came across on YouTube that just, all of a sudden want to school you on Hebrew history and all of this stuff. And they just came across it maybe a couple of years ago, or they used to be a pastor and then all of a sudden they decided that now all of a sudden they're the ultimate scholar and all this other stuff. No, 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 no. You got to go to the people who this is what they do. They got the paperwork behind them. They didn't go to one of these schools and get one of these PhDs and like a PhD mill. No, these are people who went to real schools and did real research, and they had the full body of work to do it. Okay, so this guy, his name is it's right here, Mauro. Hope I'm saying his name right, Mauro Biglino, and he is based in Turin, over in Italy. And so his videos, all he speaks is English. I'm sorry, Italian. Get it right, Dwayne. Italian, but thankfully, he's been putting a lot of his videos and doing a little translator thing. So it's very easy. So for those of us who are English speakers, we can understand exactly what he's saying. So I'm very grateful for them to do that, because what he's been presenting on his platform has been mind-blowing stuff. So what we're going to do, the video itself is 16 minutes long. We're not going to play the whole video. My hope is that you will go check out his stuff. And, if you find it interesting, go and subscribe. I personally do. And, but we're going to play about 6 minutes of that video. And I want you to listen to what he has to say on the real history behind this whole thing about swearing oaths and, by putting your hand under the thigh, and where exactly that came from. This, my friends, is going to blow your mind. Take a listen.
When I made the last video titled Abraham's Camels, I received a lot of positive reactions. It was viewed by tens of thousands of people, but it also raised some perplexities. So, what raised some perplexities that we will address immediately? When I talked about the oath, and for those who haven't seen it, I'll briefly summarize. When Abraham sends his most trusted servant, the Damascene, that is, from Damascus, Eliezer, to the land of his family to find a wife for his son Isaac, he essentially told the servant, making him take an oath. We are in Genesis chapter 24. Please place your hand under my thigh. I will have you swear by. Here it says, Hashem, the Hebrew translation. Hashem, I repeat for those who may not know, means the name, because the Jews could not pronounce the name Yahweh, and therefore replaced it with Hashem, meaning the name. Anyway, essentially, he says, place your hand under my thigh. I had actually said that this was a euphemism. Placing the hand under the thigh to make the oath actually referred to an oath between males. Obviously, it involved touching the genitals, and this, of course, raised some perplexities. I repeat, because I was told that putting the hand under the thigh is one thing, touching the genitals is another. Let's say this. The entire complex of the oath system was a very articulated system, and it also developed over time. Oaths were made for the life of a person. Oaths were made for Yahweh. Oaths were made, for example, for the temple. Even at the time of Jesus, I tell you, Jesus was in conflict with his fellow rabbis, that is, Pharisee teachers, because once again, in these absolutely necessary dialogues in the Jewish world, they discussed the modalities. For example, Jesus in Matthew says, "You shall not bear false witness," and this is also taken from the Old Testament, "but you shall fulfill your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, nor by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, nor by..." Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Again, in Matthew, in chapter 23, it says, "Woe to you." He addresses his fellow Pharisees, teachers who thought differently from him, which was absolutely normal. I have said this before because study was always conducted among different people, among different teachers who had the task and obligation to interpret the law. What are presented to us as confrontations were very normal discussions, and the Talmud is full of them. There are thousands of discussions among the various teachers who, in the end, also tried to reach, when possible, a mediation on the interpretation of the passages of the law. In this specific case, Jesus says, "Woe to you blind guides who say, if someone swears by the temple, it means nothing, but if someone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound. But what is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? And so, instead, one swears by the offering that is on it and remains bound, and so on." This practice of swearing was indeed very controversial, much discussed, but constantly practiced over the centuries. Now let's return to the perplexity that was raised for me. One thing is to put the hand under the thigh. Another thing is to touch the genitals. This is not my interpretation. Let's read it directly from what the Jewish exegetes say in their publications. You remember, I have used this edition of the Bible from the Jewish publishing house Mama several times, precisely because it is truly rich in information about Jewish thought. Let's go to the commentary on that verse from Genesis that I read to you a moment ago. Here they say that my descendants are defined as those who come out from the thigh of the father. It refers to the book of Exodus, and indeed let's read in Exodus 1:5, where it says that all the people who came from the loins, that is from the thigh of Jacob, were 70 people. Here begins the list of descendants. Now, the word thigh in Hebrew used in the book of Exodus is exactly the same as the one used here by Abraham when he says to his servant Eliezer, "Put your hand under my thigh." Now, it clearly states that those descendants sprang from Jacob's thigh. Now it is clear that by thigh, the male genital organ is meant. Indeed, this note continues, stating, Ibn Ezra explains that at that time it was customary to swear in this way. Even Jacob, before dying, asked his son Joseph to place his hand under his thigh before swearing that he would bury him in the land of Israel. This, in short, was so that the Pharaoh in the future could not say certain things, but this is not the topic that interests us. Rashi explains, and Rashi, I remind you, is one of the most important Jewish exegetes of all time, that Abraham chose the thigh as confirmation of the oath. In fact, when making an oath, one must place the hand on a sacred object, sacred, as we have already said. But I repeat it because certain concepts must be very clear, meant any element that was separated from normality and was specifically dedicated to Yahweh. He therefore says that one must place the hand on a sacred object, such as the Torah scroll or the Tefillin. Since circumcision was the first commandment given to Abraham, and since he performed it with such pain, it was particularly precious. For this reason, Abraham asked Eliezer to swear on it, that is, to swear on the circumcision. Indeed, in other types of commentaries, I have even read that it was not just about touching the genitals, but actually taking the male genital organ in hand. This, precisely to take in hand, according to Rashi's explanation, the organ that had been subjected to circumcision. So, as you can see, we have resolved this perplexity, which was not my interpretation, but was exactly the Jewish tradition that also has a series of explanations. Obviously, this is an oath practiced among males for obvious reasons. Then, as we saw earlier, the rabbis sought, as always, various interpretations that, in some cases, represented real tricks. As we read, swearing for the temple rather than not swearing for the gold of the temple, but this matter has evolved over time. Let us keep in mind that Abraham was not actually subject to those who, we know them as the 10 Commandments, meaning he was not subject to the Mosaic law for obvious reasons. Abraham came several centuries before Moses, and probably some of you will remember that I have read the passage where Moses.
Okay, so we're going to stop there because like he talks about other topics on there, but I wanted to highlight that part of the video. Like I said, the video itself, that particular one is about 16 minutes long, a little over 16 minutes, but you will find it be quite interesting to say the least. And all his work, he's got a channel full of videos. I really highly encourage you to go check him out. And I'll put the link in the description of my video, so making it easier for you just to click and go check out that video and the rest of his channel. But just to recap again, I mean, you hear that, and you can look this up. In fact, what I did is I took a step further, And remember now, ChatGPT is very good, is a good starter point for people who want to research. You'll never hear me say that ChatGPT is the end all when it comes to is 100% factual and there's never going to be any mistakes or anything like that. I'll never say that. There's been times where I've had to make adjustments with ChatGPT's findings because I'm like, no, you're not. There's a reason why you're not looking at this. Take this in consideration. And then finally it does. And then it's like, oh, you know what? You're right. So it's still in that process right now. But for the most part, it is a good starter point. You know, not your uncle, not your cousin and them, not on YouTube where you hear somebody just throwing things out and not showing you anything, you know, and taking little snippets and excerpts of things. That's pretty clear. I mean, when you rewind, and I'm getting ready to show you what ChatGPT had to say on this. When you rewind, I mean, when you really think about it, this whole thing about the generations coming out of the thigh, physically, it's nothing's coming out of your thigh except bone, muscle, and veins and blood. Okay. So nothing comes out of your thigh. So just when you actually sit down and think about it, it does make sense that, yeah, they're not talking about the thigh here, but we've never had anybody put that together until, you know, at least for me, until this guy who actually has done the work has delved into it. And I'm like, oh, okay, it does make some sense here. And I also thought it was interesting how you pointed out that this was obviously this was something that was done between males. And that the reason why it was done is because it's something that would always be kept in secret. Now, when you study about these Freemasonry and hidden groups and organizations, they always tend to get down like that, where they know that, okay, you're going to, engage in this, and this is going to be between us. Y'all, this is basically low-key hand job stuff. I mean, it is. I mean, this is, anyway. Wow. Anyway, let's move on. So I asked straight up, I said, now, based on Jewish sources, the thigh was actually the genitalia of the man. And then this is what ChatGPT had to say. Exactly, you're right. In Jewish rabbinic sources and traditional commentary, the hand under the thigh is usually understood not as the thigh itself, but a euphemism for the genital area. And here's a breakdown. And it gives you the breakdown of the sources. These are Jewish resources. Rather, if you choose to believe and say, okay, these are the false people, they don't know what they're talking about. Anybody that says that, challenge them and say, okay, where are your ancient sources? Where are your scrolls? Where is all that? Don't just tell me, just dismiss it simply because you don't like the people. You can have whatever opinion you have of Jewish people. The fact of the matter is that they have documented their claims, at least, and they have centuries of documentation. You just have a King James Version Bible that you still don't even quite understand. I'm talking about a lot of people who have a problem with this. But anyway, let's read the Talmud, and it gives the reference, and later commentaries explain that the thigh, and just this is confirming everything this man was just saying, which is Yerkre. I'm not going to even say it in Hebrew, often refers to the organ of procreation. This was linked to circumcision, the physical sign of the covenant given by Abraham in Genesis 17 by swearing with a hand under the quote unquote wink, wink, nod, nod thigh. The oath taker placed his hand near the circumcision mark, the visible token of God's covenant with Abraham's descendants. So the Torah scroll, it sounded like the Torah scroll is actually a euphemism for the penis in this case, because what you're saying is that like this gentleman just explained, when you made an oath, you had to make an oath on something that was considered sacred, right? And so when you get in the Jewish faith, when you get circumcised, that is considered a sacred thing. So sometimes when they would make an oath, they will put their hands on the Torah, the actual Torah scroll. Well, if you don't have access to a Torah scroll, then between men, they would put their hands on something that was another thing that was considered sacred, and that is the circumcised penis. So yeah, so it's a Torah scroll. Then they give another example here in Rashi. This is another, I think, Jewish scholar, 11th century. The classic commentator Rashi to Genesis 24:2 explains, since one who swears must hold in his hand a sacred object, and there was no sacred object there except circumcision, which had been given to him as a commandment, he placed his hand under the thigh near the circumcision. In other words, the oath was bound to the holiest sign Abraham had, the covenant of circumcision. And then it goes on, another person, he says that it's used as an euphemism, making it clear that the meaning is tied to the procreative organs. So yeah, so this is what we're dealing with here. This is what we're dealing with here. And this is why it's so important for us. And I know for many people hearing this is tough. It's hard. How can this even be? You making stuff up. Well, you got to be willing to keep digging. Like me, I had to be willing, even though I thought I was like, okay, I got it now. I got everything. Okay, this is my place. I'm just going to glide on with this information. Even the information I'm presenting right now, same thing. You have to keep digging. You got to keep verifying. Learning is a lifelong process. And in this case here, we learned something really interesting. An oath, a man's genitalia is seen on the same level as a Torah scroll. That should cause anybody to have some great pause about a number of things. Anyway, thank you again for tuning into this video. You guys take care, and I will see you again soon. Take care.